into the Cougar Tailgate, where BYU fandom lives. Here's your host, Lauren McLean.
What's up, my friends? Lauren McLean here with Cleon Wall, and we're doing what we do best, talking all things BYU Cougars. Here's what's coming up on the show today. Men's basketball takes a crack at the Runnin' Utes in Provo, and we chat with former head coach Steve Cleon about his experience with the rivalry and what it takes to come away with the dub. Plus, in honor of BYU football playing its 40th bowl game, we'll discuss some of the best game-changing plays in the Cougars Bowl history. Our list includes plays by Jim McMahon, Steve Young, Kyle Van Noy, and more. But first, the New Mexico Bowl against the SMU Mustangs is upon us. And it feels a bit underwhelming, to be honest. There's so much happening with BYU football right now that has nothing to do with this game. So it kind of feels like an afterthought. But alas, here we are. Cleon, what are you looking forward to about this bowl game?
I know this is going to sound boring, but I think I just want a good game. I'm really not expecting that much, Lauren. I don't know. I mean, that sounds really bad, but I just want a good game. Whether BYU wins or loses to me right now is immaterial. Of course, I like to see BYU win. The other side of me just says I just want to see a good game, and I hope that everything turns out okay. I mean, we've heard a lot that we're expecting a shootout because both these teams have been able to score a lot of points this season, but they're also going to be missing players. So it'll probably be something like 24-17 or 17-10. I don't know what it's going to be. I just want a good game. I mean, I wouldn't mind if we saw Cade Finnegan in this game. I just want to see positive progress for the guys who are going to play next season. That's it. That's all I expect from this game coming up this Saturday.
It's interesting because we really don't know who we're going to see. And I'm the opposite of you. I don't want a good game. I want a blowout, even though, as history has proven itself, that's probably not going to happen. I am also looking forward to, Cleon, to watching Chris Brooks and Puka Nacua play one more time. I wish Jaren Hall was playing. I guess there's still a slight chance, but I don't think that's going to happen. I have zero expectations for this game beyond that. BYU most likely will have a brand new quarterback playing, like you said, a bit of a thrown together defense because there are so many injuries. And then Kalani and Gennaro Guilford are holding down the fort as far as coaching goes on the defensive side, since Jay Hill and Kelly Papinga are going to be staying around Provo helping with signing day and getting recruits, as they should be. So I'm looking forward to watching the Cougars play one more game this season. I'm just looking forward to watching my team play one more game. What I'm about to watch, though, and experience is anyone's guess. But as always, I'm hoping for the best.
You kind of sound like Les Miserables there. One day more. Okay, we're not going to sing this.
One day more.
But something like that. It's like, hey, I get to watch one more game, and maybe I'll see something dynamic or fun or something like that. That's me. I'm just like, I just want a good game. I know you want to blow out. I want a good game. I just want to see something positive from the Cougars going into the offseason. I guess that's me.
Agreed. I would like to be pleasantly surprised. The question is, Cleon, will the bowl game options get better once BYU gets into the Big 12? If you're really good, obviously, you can end up in a New Year's Six Bowl. And then next up is the Alamo Bowl and the Cheez-Its Bowl in Orlando, which really aren't bad options. But if you're one of the last teams taken, you could end up in the Armed Forces Bowl, Texas Bowl, or Liberty Bowl. And most of these bowl games are against other Power 5 teams, which is really nice. But as anything else, the lower you go, you could play against Conference USA or the American Conference. So I actually don't think are bad options. All right, Cleon, call your shot. Will BYU be in a bowl game next year or not?
I'm going to say yes. Right now, I'm going to say yes. They'll be in a bowl game next year. I think they go 6-6. They're going to start the season out. I think they're going to start the season out 2-0. So you only need to win 4 of your next 10 games after that. So I think they can go 6-6. That would put them probably in a lower tier bowl, kind of like what we were talking about, maybe against a Conference USA team or someone from the American Conference. But I think they get 6 wins. I think they get into a lower tier bowl, and I think they're successful that way. If we're just looking at it from how was the first season in the Big 12 and they made it to a bowl game, I think they can do that.
Well, yeah, and I hope you're right. BYU would have been middle of the pack in the Big 12 this year, and that's with a subpar defense but a Jaren Hall-led offense. So Hall most likely won't be with the Cougars next year, but I'm hoping for a stellar transfer portal pickup at the quarterback spot for next year and a much better defense. It'll be Jay Hill's first year implementing his defensive mindset and schemes. Plus, some of BYU's defensive stars have flipped to Utah, as we know, and recruits are picking up other schools because of all the changes and an okay season from BYU. So bearing all that in mind, I think it's possible that BYU struggles this first season and just ekes by into bowl eligibility. But like you said, after they win those first 2 games, which are almost guaranteed that they're going to win, they just need 4 more wins. And I think they can do that. I'm really hoping for it. But also, I think fans and all of us need to have some expectations that the Cougars may struggle and most likely will a little bit in this first season and the first few seasons, honestly. But man, I hope I'm pleasantly surprised. Sometimes being realistic is the worst, isn't it, Cleon?
No, I totally understand. As you were talking about that, it made me think back to 2005 when during Bronco Mendenhall's first season. The Cougars started out 1-4 that season. And we thought, what's going on? Is it all the same like it was under Gary Croton? And then BYU turned it around. They ended up going, I believe, 6-5 the rest of the season, and they ended up going to the Las Vegas Bowl. They lost the bowl game, but they still ended up going to the Las Vegas Bowl. And so I think that's what you're hoping for. You're, as a BYU fan, like you said, you have to be realistic about it, and you're like, well, what are you hoping for? I think that first season you're kind of hoping for, I think they can make 500, and let's just get into another bowl game. And you would call that pretty successful in your first season. And you've got to remember there are changes coming about, just like with Broncos' first season. It was like there were changes. There was a new coach, but he turned a team that went 5-7 or 5-6, I think, his first year into a team that went 6-5. It's like, well, big deal, one game. But then the very next season, BYU went 10-2. So it's amazing what you can do just with one season. If you can just have something positive, like I said, if you can have something positive from this season going into next season and the next season, just have a few more little positives here and there. Jay Hill starts recruiting, other guys start recruiting, and the next thing you know, maybe the following season you're 8-4 or 9-3, or maybe you're just 7-5, but you're still seeing progress. I think that's kind of what you're hoping for. At least that's what I'm kind of hoping for. So I think that 6-6 it can be doable in that first season of the Big 12.
Yeah, because when there's a new coach that comes in, you have to wait for them to get their own guys, even when it's a coordinator. They have to get their own guys in. They have to get all the current guys bought into the system, and that can take a year or two. So I think we need to be patient. But I see a hopeful future for the Cougars. BYU will play in their 40th bowl game when they play SMU. It's the first bowl game for BYU was in 1974. It was the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State, and the Cougars lost 16-6. BYU lost their first four bowl games, in fact, but their first bowl victory was in the 1980 Holiday Bowl, or as we know it, the Miracle Bowl. BYU won 46-45 against none other than SMU. BYU scored 21 points in the final 2:33 of the game to beat the Mustangs to win 46-45, including the final heave from Jim McMahon that landed in the arms of Clay Brown as time expired.
Down by 6 now, 3 seconds left, 3rd and 10 at the SMU 41-yard line. McMahon all the way back in his own 46, throwing for the end zone. Receivers are there, defenders are there. It is in the end zone. Who has the ball? Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown, Brigham Young!
It's a play that is etched in the minds of Cougar fans, whether they were alive or not. Cleon was alive. I was not. Cleon, is that the single greatest game-changing play in BYU's bowl history, in your opinion?
First of all, thanks for bringing up my age again. Yes, it clicks all the boxes of excitement. Last play of the game, check. Wins the game, check. Caps off an improbable comeback, check. It was just an awesome play. To see that, I didn't get to. I didn't see it live, on TV, or I wasn't at Jack Murphy Stadium when the game happened against SMU. I didn't see any of that. But going back and looking at that highlight, it's been played over and over and over again, and it gives you all the feels, I guess is what people say now. You just feel great about it, and it's just like that is such an amazing play, and yeah, it is the single greatest game-changing play in bowl history for BYU. And on top of that, like what we talked about, it was BYU's first ever bowl victory.
Yes, and I think you're right. All of us feel like we were there, whether we were live or not, because we've watched that play happen so many times by the famous and infamous Jim McMahon. Let's talk about what play would be number 2, Cleon.
Okay. Here are some potential nominees. I'll name, since you brought up my age, I'll name the older ones. 1983, Steve Young, not one. Steve Young catches
Steve won.
Yeah, he is number 1, or he was number 8, or whatever you want to say. Steve Young caught the game-winning touchdown pass in the 1983 Holiday Bowl against Missouri. And I don't remember seeing that one live either, but it's amazing to see him catch it on his fingers, like barely in his fingers.
It didn't look pretty. That play was not a pretty play, but it worked.
No, it was not. But he caught it, and that was the game-winning catch. So that was amazing. Robbie Bosco's game-winning TD to Kelly Smith to win the Holiday Bowl in 1984, and also the national championship game against Michigan. Also very good. K.O. Kealalui 28-yard touchdown catch from Steve Sarkisian in the 1997 Cotton Bowl to give the Cougars a 19-15 lead. There were still 3 minutes left to go in the game, but still amazing that BYU was able to make a comeback and to take a lead late in the game. And then in that same game, let's go with the defensive play. Omar Morgan's game-winning interception in that 1997 Cotton Bowl to seal the win. So those are 4 of the nominees. Let's turn it back over to Lauren.
So official, my goodness.
I know,
it's like you did the news or something.
It's either that or I wanted to be a game show host. It was one of the two.
Oh, yeah, that did sound much more like a game show host. That's right. All right, Laura, I'm going to hop on to 2007 in my recent memory. Ethan Manamaleuna blocks UCLA's game-winning field goal attempt in the Las Vegas Bowl. I remember that very well. That was awesome. 2011 Armed Forces Bowl versus Tulsa. Riley Nielsen's 2-yard TD pass to Cody Hoffman when we thought he was going to spike it. Do you remember that? But instead, it was the winning score.
18 seconds. Clock it. He'll fake the clock. Throw to the end zone. Touchdown! Cody Hoffman with 11 seconds remaining.
And then in the 2012 Poinsettia Bowl, I remember this one the most. Kyle Van Noy stripped San Diego State quarterback to recover the ball in the end zone to give BYU the 10-6 lead. First lead of the game, and then the Cougars end up winning 23-6. And then in 2016, Kai Nakua seals the Poinsettia Bowl victory with an interception of none other than Josh Allen and the Cowboys. So, Cleon, what do you think of all those? Which one is number 2?
Ooh, this one's a tough one for me. If I wanted to go with the unexpected, like I can't believe that they did this or that the play actually worked, I'm going to go with Riley Nelson's 2-yard TD pass to Cody Hoffman when everyone thought they were going to spike the ball. I seriously, everyone except probably the players on the field. And I think some of the coaches thought they were going to spike the ball too, but they go for it and they score a touchdown with, I believe it was less than 10 seconds left in the game. So for the unexpected, I go with that. If I want to go with nerve-wracking, I'll go with Ethan Manamaleuna''s block. Or maybe Omar Morgan's interception in the Cotton Bowl. I'd probably go with Ethan Manamaleuna''s block just because it was just like, I can't believe BYU's played this well and they're going to lose it on a field goal. And then all of a sudden, Manamaleuna blocks it and BYU preserves the win. So that one's a good one too. If you want something epic to watch, I'll go with Steve Young's game-winning touchdown grab. But if I want to go with something close to what we've already established of it's checking all the boxes, I'm probably going to still go with Riley Nelson's, hey, I'm going to spike the ball. Whoops, I'm not. I'm going to throw a 2-yard touchdown pass to Cody Hoffman, and everyone's just standing around going, wait, what just happened?
Yep. You can't say anything about Riley Nelson except that he is just a gutsy player. He was fun to watch. You didn't always know what you were going to get, but man, he definitely had a lot of courage, and I loved watching him. We didn't mention, Cleon, the 2014 bench clearing bowl against Memphis. For all of you,
I did throw that as a joke nominee. Yeah. I was like, hey, what do you think about this, Lauren? And I'm just like, I'm not expecting.
I was actually there.
Were you?
I was actually there at the Miami Bowl. I was. It was really interesting. Not sure what happened. There was that whole game was just so chippy back and forth. But yes, we won't go there.
That has to be one of the low lights. Before you give yours, I will have to say that has to be one of the low lights where it was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What happened here? So
that was maybe the low light of the bowl game era.
Yeah.
For BYU football. For my personal memory bank, I got to go with the Kyle Van Noy show against San Diego State in 2012. BYU was down 3-6 heading into the fourth quarter, until Kyle Van Noy sacked the QB, causing a fumble, and he fell on it in the end zone for the lead. I remember that. And in the same quarter, Kyle Van Noy had a pick six to end the game. Van Noy was named the defensive MVP after finishing with 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, mind you, a forced fumble and fumble recovery, 1 interception, a block punt, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 8 total tackles. He just took over that game. He just took it over. And I know we're talking about one play, but that one specific play where he causes a fumble from the quarterback and then dives on it in the end zone, that completely changed the entire game. And then he just took over for the rest of the game. That's when I knew that Kyle Van Noy was destined to play at the next level. It was James Larkus quarterback. James was a backup at the time. He wasn't playing very well in that game. BYU's offense was really struggling, and you could just see it in Kyle Van Noy's eyes. He's like, all right, I'm taking this into my own hands. And he did. It was awesome. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I do remember that game.
Not only is football happening, but also men's basketball against none other than the University of Utah. Coming up, former BYU men's basketball head coach Steve Cleveland joins us to talk all things blue and red. It's Rival Time up next on Cougar Tailgate. Welcome back to Cougar Tailgate. I'm Lauren McLean alongside Cleon Wall. And joining us now is former BYU head basketball coach from 1997 to 2005, Steve Cleveland. Coach, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Coach, you were at Fresno Community College before coming to BYU. What did you know about the BYU-Utah rivalry before you started coaching the Cougars?
I knew there was a rivalry, obviously. I had not really spent much time in Utah. Didn't really have any connections there. I was good friends with Roger Reed. In fact, I had come up 2 or 3 years before I got the job, and we spent some time together about it, possibly even working with him. And so I got a little sense and a feel for it. That's probably my first time. That's probably 1994. And I was on campus and met a lot of good folks. And I probably got a better feel for it then. I worked some camps there a couple of times when I was a high school coach. But for the most part, I wasn't that familiar. Certainly didn't understand it until after I got the job. But I followed Utah like I followed BYU. They always had great teams, always in the tournament. And but I don't think I had any even close to an understanding of what it meant and how it would impact my life.
After you got the job here at BYU, how much did you hear from alumni, students, fans, just in general about, hey, we really need to beat Utah?
It was a unique time because, it's pretty well documented. Roger Reed is a great coach and had a great career there, but they had kind of a hiccup year and things went south a little bit. And all of a sudden, I'm the new head basketball coach there. And I think the first impact it had on me was that Utah was in a really good place. 97, 98. We're coming off a 1-win season and trying to rebuild a program, and Utah's obviously number 7 in the country, gets to the Final Four, loses in the final to Kentucky. It was going to be really hard to recruit. And I knew that immediately and sensed the rivalry and the more people you talk to. And so, I can understand that the BYU fans were a little bit anxious to get this thing rekindled again. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we were in a really difficult, tough situation rebuilding at that time. And we didn't quite have the firepower that Utah had and the program that they had going at that particular time when we got there.
You mentioned that the Utes went to the Final Four. You were just rebuilding a program. Rick Majerus was the head coach. What do you remember about that very first game against Utah in your first season?
Well, it was honestly, it was a huge mismatch. You're talking about 3 or 4 pros on that team. And that wasn't that our guys didn't play hard and compete, but they were always going to be 20 to 25 points better than us. It's just a fact. And they were doing that to good teams. And certainly we brought a number of community college players in. And the funny thing is that first year, as we played them, for me, I don't think I was as emotionally involved at that point in time. We were just trying to rebuild a program. And we couldn't let Utah, who at the time, and I'm sure it was painful for the fan base, but for us, it was more looking forward, looking down the road So I knew what the fan base wanted, but the reality is that we were not in a position for a couple of years to even have an opportunity to do that. They were a top 10 team in the country, and we were rebuilding.
So you lost that first year a few times to Utah. Do you actually remember the first time you beat the Utes?
Oh yeah. No, listen, you're coaching this business. I mean, we lost 7 in a row to them. And so in that first 3 years, they completely, dominated us. But what happened in the third year is we finally started getting our guys. And that was probably one of the most impactful wins. We're at the Mountain West Conference tournament. And, we had been beaten by them 7 times. And here we are, we're playing them in the semifinals. And, the great story here is Eric Nielsen was a young man that went on a mission when we first got here, he and Matt Montague. And for Eric to kind of go for 17 and I think 9, we beat BYU. I mean, we beat Utah that year, 58-54. And it was a kind of a relief. And I'll tell you what happened is it let everybody know that BYU was kind of back. And then the following year, we would beat them again and win the Mountain West Conference tournament. We were in the Mountain West Conference regular season. And really, to be honest with you, that win was probably the most significant thing that happened in terms of us being able to go recruit Utah players again. Because I'm telling you, we had no chance. Utah State was really good. BYU was good. Weber was good. And it was hard to get into doors other than just to tell them what our vision was and where we were going forward. Once we won that game, it was a game changer. And we'd go to the tournament 3 times. We'd have some success against Utah. But it was a long, arduous haul getting to that point. But I will never forget that game. And, Eric was just such a sweet young man and a big part in terms of leadership to our team.
You mentioned relief as one of the things you were feeling when you finally got to beat him. I can't imagine being a head coach for a major university and all the pressure that comes with that. What else did you feel after finally beating the Utes after a 7-year losing streak?
I can still remember going into the post-game area, and I brought Eric with me. And I'd be honest with you, I think there were and it wasn't just BYU folks, it was, BYU, Utah folks, because we were at the tournament. And I could feel a genuine love from the media. Now, you don't always have that with me as a coach, but I could just feel like, okay, you got to feel good about this. And there was a kind of a piece that came about me, and to hear Eric and then ask Eric, nobody knew who Eric Nielsen was. He'd been gone for 2 years in Russia on a mission. He comes back and has a big game. And, in fact, it was kind of a cool thing because one of the media folks just said, well, where have you been? And, what he had a chance to kind of share some of his experiences on his mission. And because nobody knew him. And really, we were pretty irrelevant to the world of, that level of play for a couple of years until that third year where winning that game. And then we'd go on and get to the NIT that year, win a couple of games in NIT, lose at Notre Dame. But that was the point you can look back and say, okay, we kind of turned this thing. BYU hasn't had many rebuilding times. And usually it's sustaining and they've had a lot of success. But in this situation, it was a little bit unique. And yes, it was, I guess you could say the thing that comes to me is you just kind of take a deep breath and exhale and go, okay, let's move forward.
Was that your most memorable game against Utah, or do you have another one that you really love? Because I have one that I love that you coached in, but I want to hear what your answer is.
It's probably the same one. So, we have kind of won the league, and we were in a situation in 2001, 2002, where we had beaten by Utah at home, and we're down. We're literally down like 23 or 20. I think it was 21. We were down at second half. I think it got to about 23 or 24. We're down in the second half at home. We've got a good team. We lost some really good senior leadership with Terrell Holiday and Trent Whiting and McKelly Wesley and Matt Montague and Eric Neal. We lost some of those kids who were starting over. And the place was packed. I think it was during the Olympic time. And because I can remember afterwards going up to Salt Lake for some Olympic events. And to see the 2 seniors, Matt Montague and Eric Nielsen, hit huge shots late in that game Dan Howard, who a lot of people aren't going to remember or know, hit a big free throw, and Mark Bigelow finished it. But that was probably the most rewarding win when we were down 20 plus, and to come back and to see the fan base, and it was a special night.
Yeah, and that's the same game that I was going to say, Lauren and Coach Cleveland. I remember helping out with the broadcast of that game, and when Eric Nielsen hit the shot to take the lead, I think it was Eric Nielsen. But
yes, it was.
Yeah, it was amazing to me that your team was able to do that.
It's incredible to me that the rivalry games are some of the most memorable just for everybody involved, fans alike. So as a coach, you mentioned how big the rivalry game plays into recruiting in state and how important that is. Because of that, how do you prepare your teams for this game year in and year out? Is it different than any other game?
Yeah, it is, because number one, and we didn't have. I mean, there were times that when I was coaching there, we had a number of Utah kids on the roster, and there was other times where maybe a third or half of them were and half weren't. But I think in preparing for that, I think I probably made this mistake, early on. We had a whole lot of different experiences throughout this process. And I think the one that made the most sense is that let's just basically stay with the process. We don't have to do anything extra. We didn't have to give a big pep talk before the game. They understood. They clearly understood. That may not have been true the first year or two when we were struggling, but it became apparent that this was a game on the calendar that everybody looked forward to. As Jeff Judkins was a part of our program, and when Jeff was at Utah during our first few years, he actually contacted me and just felt like he needed to be in a different place, and we ended up hiring Jeff, and so it was also Jeff. I think Jeff was great for us in the preparation, and I think that just having Juddy there and having an understanding of that mindset there, that we didn't have, like I said, we didn't have to have a serious pep talk here. It was about execution, staying with the game plan, don't get out of it. And we were always playing. I never played a Utah team that wasn't a 20-win season time win and had good success. So beating Utah early on was something that we needed to do to kind of become relevant again. But I think for me, throughout that process, I didn't hang on to those losses very long.
Coach, thank you so much for coming on. We're here with former BYU head basketball coach Steve Cleveland, coach from 97 to 2005. Coach, you were incredible and incredibly wise, and thank you again for taking the time with us today.
Hey, thanks, you guys. Love you. Love BYU. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Steve Cleveland is such a great guy. Favorite BYU versus Utah rivalry moment that you have witnessed, Cleon? Which is it?
One of my favorites is Yuli Child's dunk at Vivint Arena in 2018. That's a really cool moment. Eric Nielsen and the Cougars making that huge comeback that Coach Cleveland talked about. That's one of my favorite. That would probably be my personal favorite, just because it was just amazing to see a team that I didn't think was going to beat Utah end up beating Utah and making this incredible comeback. And then, of course, there's the Jimmer Fredette 47 points in Salt Lake in 2011. By the way, my least favorite, Nick Emery punching Brandon Taylor, which leads to Larry Kraskowiak, buying out the game the following year. It led to a legislative audit. Boo. I hated all of that.
We mentioned the lowlights of the bowl game. Here's the lowlights of the Utah rivalry in men's basketball.
I had to bring it up. That was like the worst of the worst, having all that come down where it was like one to the next. And it's just like, can't we just play basketball?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I definitely don't like that aspect of the rivalry. I love the competitiveness. I love the banter. But then when it gets to that level, it's a bit too much for me. My favorite was one you mentioned, Jimmer's 47 points at the Huntsman Center in Salt Lake City in 2011. It was epic. I was a student reporter watching during the Jimmer era. Man, I feel so blessed that I was a student during the Jimmer era. It just was so much fun to cheer for men's basketball in those years. His half-court shot right before halftime, he drills it and walks off like it ain't nothing. I remember watching him, and we interviewed him after, and I don't know if you have seen A Knight's Tale, but there's a part where he goes, "Do you want to touch him? Do you want to touch him?" That's exactly how I felt with Jimmer Fredette. Like, this guy is untouchable. He is unbeatable. So much fun to watch. So that was definitely my number one. All right, and that does it for us today. Thanks again to Steve Cleveland for coming on the show with us. You can join the Cougar Tailgate wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on BYURadio.org. And by the way, this is our last episode of the year. We're going to take a few weeks off, and our next episode is going to be the first week of January. Cougar Tailgate is a production of BYU Radio.